What's up, YouTube? This is Bunny Hop Show, and I'm here with another episode of Stanley Parable. And wait, this isn't right. The Stanley Parable, in all its strange, beautiful flamboyance and subtlety, will be discussed, argued, and lionized for. Wait, no, that's too unoriginal. The Stanley Parable is an interactive electronic moving picture contest that the audience operates using their eyeballs and appendages. In the Stanley Parable, there is no such thing as the fourth wall. You see the action of the game, and the game sees you back. There are plenty of boundaries between its fictional space and our own reality, but those are all superficial. The whole game is about acknowledging that it's a game. Depending on how you play, it's either a graceful dance or a desperate struggle between player agency and narrative control. The Stanley Parable is a commercial release of the free Half-Life 2 mod, The Stanley Parable, which was made by a crazy guy called Davey Redden. In The Stanley Parable, you walk through doors and listen to a narrator talk about it.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet.
It contains fast-paced, twitchy action and real-time global leaderboards. The Stanley Parable is a tight, highly controlled linear narrative with many branching paths and multiple endings. Here is an example of the excitement and adventure that the Stanley Parable contains. Like most of the narrative-focused first-person walkers coming out these days, it's best to go into Stanley without knowing much about it. But it's also hard to describe the general purpose and theme of the game without spoiling the jokes, because it's kind of a unique premise. But to be fair, the mod has been free for years, and there's also an excellent demo version for this game, and both come highly recommended. They're both free, they're both short, and they're both very satisfying, so I'm gonna go into this review assuming that you played at least one of the two, as both of them nicely act as an introduction to what a Stanley game does. So if you haven't played them out already, scroll down to the description, click a link, and check them out. They're free and short, so you got nothing to lose but about a half hour of time. What the Stanley Parable does is write out a playful interplay between a game player and a game storyteller. The whole premise is to explore the contradictions that are inherent to the medium. Cause, you know, in any game that has a story, there has to be some kind of predetermined narrative and also some kind of illusion of choice. In other words, all of the player's freedoms, liberties, and binary morality systems have to be delicately restrained and moderated long before the game ever starts. That's confusing. That's what the Stanley Parable is about. So what you do is explore a game in which the player, the narrator, and the writer himself are all three separate entities who have existential crises over and over again. It's a video game version of Jean-Luc Godard. It's like Cabin in the Woods, but with more cheeky sarcasm and less gore. Comparisons to Being John Malkovich and American Beauty are also inevitable, but there isn't really a movie that does this sort of thing because Stanley is all about the problems unique to gaming. It's all about satirizing and gutting those problems, making a freak show out of them and reveling in the terrifying panopticon of gameplay. There is no fourth wall. You and the game are looking at each other and trying to kill each other in this whitewashed hell where death doesn't exist.
Don't go anywhere. I can't follow you there. I can't help you.
The game's other feature is comedy, and it's not bad comedy at all. This is Portal quality writing. It's hilarious, in fact. I haven't laughed this hard at a game in years. So combined with the excellent vocal performance from the narrator and some slick level design, it's a top-notch presentation. But the big problem with the game lies in the fact that it's a commercial remake of an experimental mod. Most of the content here is just recycled from what you've played before. It looks better, it sounds better, and is presented better, but most of the branches still play out exactly like how they do in the free Half-Life 2 mod. Granted, a few of them do not, and a few new branches have been added, but there's a clear distinction between just how much more entertaining the new content is than the old. I would have liked to have seen this story entirely rewritten for the commercial release, but for the most part it's just a remake. There's so much potential for clever writing and humor in here that it's sad to see it go unfulfilled. And that's why the new story branches are so much more fun. They're not necessarily better or worse than the old, they're just new and fresh. In fact, that's exactly why the demo may be even more enjoyable as a standalone product than the full game. You can see a lot more of Davy's creative writing energy come out when he's lampooning the more specific topic of game demos rather than the whole of games themselves. The demo is totally new stuff, but on the other hand, the full game is familiar territory. The jokes have already been spoiled, and that's also the big problem with the game's replayability. The issue with charging money for the Stanley Parable is that it's still very much a novelty. Since the game's heavy on jokes and lightweight on meaningful details and Easter eggs, a replay just means that those jokes aren't going to have as much of a punch. I really enjoyed the first playthrough, but the only thing that the second one revealed is just how long the game's hallways have been extended to let the narrator finish his lines. It ironically suffers from the same contradictions it pokes fun of. For all the metagame discourse on illusory choices and fake freedoms that it offers, it's a really linear and disposable experience. And really, that makes perfect sense, but depending on how much it costs, it might not make for a good buy. I'm saying this before release, and Davy's being tight-lipped on how much the final game is going to cost, but I personally wouldn't want to go as high as Gone Home's $20 for it. And really, right now I have no idea how much this game costs. To the best of my knowledge, no one else does either, and that makes assessing the value of the transaction kinda hard to do. There's about 2.5 to 3 hours of game here that you're not going to want to replay, so it's not going to last long on your hard drive. For the first time, it's a fun and enjoyable novelty. It's really interesting and entertaining for what it is, but it's not exactly premium product. All things considered, on a scale of 1 to 5, I give the Stanley Parable a